So in this video, I'm going to show you how to write a program using numbers, how to read some numbers from the user, and how to do some calculations and things like that. If you remember, in our previous program, we did something very simple where we read the user's name as a string from the user and output something to the user. So now we are going to do something similar, but we are going to read some numbers and do some calculations for them. So here's my idle editor. I am going to get my shell open. So there's my shell, so we can test our programs. So to open your shell, either you can open the shell first and go File, New, and open the editor, or if you already have the editor open, you can go under Run and say Python shell, and that brings the shell up. So let's start writing some comments first. So remember the 3 single quote starts the comment. So this program will, let's start out by saying we'll have some fun with numbers. That's what we want to say right now. And then as we change our program, we can change our comments. They say created by, and you can put your name so you know who wrote it, and you say date, created, and you put today's date so you know when you wrote it, and close comments. And let's start by asking the user for their name first. So remember, this is what we did last time. We said name equals, and we said input. The input statement helps us read something from the user. We say please enter your name, and whenever they enter a name, it will wait for the user. When the user enters a name, it goes into this name variable. So there is that. And let's have a print statement that says hello and their name. So you close quote, comma, name. And so the name is not inside the single quote, the name is outside because it's a variable. Anything else that we want to tell the user would be inside of single quote. So say welcome to my program of numbers. So we're going to do something with numbers. So there, that should actually get this program running. Let's save it. We'll call it as sample A02 because that's what it is. Save it. And yes, I want to replace it. And let's run it. And when you run it, it says please enter your name. You enter your name, and it says welcome to my program of numbers. And we don't have any numbers. So let's have some variables for numbers. Let's say x equals 5, y equals 8, and let's say print x plus y. And let's see what that does. So file save and run it. And again, you enter your name, and it says 8 plus 5, which is what we wanted it to print, is 13. Now let's try something else. Let's say I want to ask their first name and last name separately. So let's go here and say first name equals input, please enter your first name. And let's do the same for last name. I'm going to copy the whole thing and I'm going to paste it on the next line, but I'm going to change first to last. So I can say last name equals enter your last name. And first name and last name should go together. Now, of course, I don't have a name here. I want to print their first name and last name together. So let's say first name, let's see how this comes out, plus last name. Can we string them together by using the plus sign? Let's see how it looks. So I said hello, and instead of saying name, I don't have a name anymore, but I have first name and I have last name. So, and I put them together using the plus sign. Well, we put 2 numbers together, we added them. Let's see what it does with strings. So then you do run, and it says now enter your first name. So I enter my first name and then my last name, and it puts them together all right, but then there's no space between the first name and the last name. So let's see if we can do that. So plus first name plus, we can do, let's add a space using a single quote, plus last name. So now I have 3 things that I have added: first name and then a single space. Let's see if that works. So file save, run, check it one time, no errors, then you run it, and let's enter first name, last name, and notice it added a space between my first name and last name, so that looks a little better. So that is just a way of putting strings together. That was just to show you how to do that. Now let's take a look at our variables that we have here. So we put in a 5 for x and 8 for y, and we added the two things together. Let's say we want to do something a little bit more than that. Let's say I want to actually calculate the area of a rectangle. So let's go here to our comment and say, we'll have some fun with numbers. Let's calculate the area and perimeter of a rectangle. So then we want to declare some variables for, let's do a single line comment that says variables for length and width. We'll call it length and we'll call it width. It always helps to give our variables names that make sense. So length equals, and we'll put a number 6, width equals maybe 3. Now we are going to calculate the area. So I'll have one more comment here that says calculate area and perimeter. And so let's calculate it. Area equals, we all know the area of a rectangle is length times width, so we multiply it. We know perimeter equals 2 times, and then open parenthesis, length plus width, so there's perimeter, and then we print those two things. So print and say area of your rectangle equals, and you say comma, and you output area, which is the variable. And so notice how the text goes inside of the double quote, perimeter of your rectangle, and then you close quote, comma, and then the variable goes outside. And let's see how that looks. That's it. That should finish our program. Run it. And first name, last name, and it says, look, area of the rectangle is 18. Hey, it so happens that the perimeter is also 18. But this does not read anything from the user. Let's say we want to read these variables from the user. What good is it if it's always 6 and 3? So let's have our input statement. I'm going to copy this input statement and change a couple of things. So length equals, I want to say, input, please enter length of the rectangle. Length of the rectangle. And we'll do the same for width. Paste that. Please enter width of the rectangle. And we will put that whatever the user enters should go into length and width, right? So let's try that. So now we have just read it from the user using input statements. So let's do first name, last name. All right, how about 6 and 3, the same numbers? Oh, but we get an error now. It says the problem is with the statement when it tries to calculate the area, length times width, and says can't multiply sequence by non-int of type string. So essentially what it's telling us is that the length and width are now strings. Since we have read it from the user, we need to convert them into integers. Notice if I do length plus width, what it is going to do, it will actually work this time. I'm going to comment out my perimeter statements. Notice that. So I don't have to worry about that. So if I say area equals length plus width, which is not true, but we want to see what it does. So now you enter your first name, last name, length of the rectangle is 6, width is 3. Notice I get 63, I don't get any errors. So it essentially puts the two strings together, 6 and 3. But that's not what we want. We want to be able to calculate length times width. So how do we convert this length and this width to integers? So by putting an int around this whole input that it reads. So it reads this input from the user as a string. And then we send that to the int function, which takes it and converts it into an integer. And we do the same thing for width. So we read the input as a string and we send it to the int function. So notice I have a parenthesis here for the print function, then I have a parenthesis here for the int function. Now if you go look in your PDF file that I've used for reference, there is a little bit more detail in this section on page 25 that talks about how this input is getting read as a string and getting converted into an integer. So if it's better for you, you can use multiple variables. You can say length string, read it, and then convert length string to an int and put it into a length variable, which is what we're doing there. So now that we have taken this whole thing and converted it into an integer, let's see and uncomment my parameter statements. Let's see how this works. Let's save it and run it and enter first name, last name, and length of the rectangle, width of the rectangle, and there we go. Now we get some good numbers. So anytime you read numbers from the user, and if you want them as numbers, they need to be converted into int or float or their different data type, whatever data type we want it to be, before they can be used for these calculations. And so that is what we learn in Module 2 for your assignment number 2. Hope that will help you.